What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Best Podcast News and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, I host the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dad Central. And another hat I wear out of all the different hats I wear these days, I am the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative. It is a not-for-profit Black organization that focuses and showcases Blacks who are involved in the food, wine, and travel world in the diaspora. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. It's Sunday, April 11th, and most Sunday afternoons, we do Black Canada Talking. And if you don't know what Black Canada Talking is, let's get to it. Black Canada Talking is a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are important to them. Or we also feature Black Canadians, as Spike Lee would say, doing the right thing. And today we have two new people that you may or may not know. I know one you probably don't, one you may not. Richard Miller and Rachel Xyminis-Chen of Keep Six. So a little background on Keep Six and both of them before we bring them live to the stage. Keep Six is a not-for-profit Toronto-based organization serving the Greater Toronto area that was founded in 2017. Its purpose is to make a meaningful difference in the lives of at-risk youth from racialized communities who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. They offer various programs and services to help youth avoid going down a disempowering path towards incarceration. They also support and advocate for those who are currently incarcerated and provide post-release support so they can overcome barriers and begin to positively rebuild their lives within the community. Their vision is to support criminalized and racialized communities to attain positivity and break the odds, overcome systemic barriers to support at-risk youth and those criminalized by the justice system. Their mission is to provide holistic and integrated capacity-building programs to youth involved in the justice system, prevent youth from going down a disempowering path by providing one-on-one mentoring, career counseling, and employment skills training. They also have part of their mission to promote healthy self-esteem in youth through core skills counseling to help build on their communication, interpersonal skills, and leadership skills. So first things first, let's introduce Rachel Xyminis-Chen. As a street-involved youth, she saw many of her friends and partner fall into the entrapment of the criminal justice system. Supporting her partner through his federal incarceration was a turning point for her when she experienced firsthand the struggles of supporting an incarcerated loved one. Her passion for reform has granted her the blessing of working with Keep Six as the Keep Six organization, advocating supporting individuals impacted by the Canadian criminal justice system. Her mission is to break the stigma associated with incarceration and to provide a safe space for families and loved ones to support one another through their journey. So let's welcome Rachel. How are we doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am so happy I've heard so many positive things about you, so it's such a blessing to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be here.
Right back at you. And the gentleman who has just entered the stage, he is an interesting gentleman. We talk every once in a while, so let me share a little bit about him. Richard Miller is the founder of Keep Six and a community-driven community leader dedicated to assisting underserved youth. After experiencing and witnessing misrepresentation, racism, corruption, and injustices experienced by Black youth and minorities, he decided to establish Keep Six. It is his passion to bring healing to individuals who have been through traumatic experiences by ensuring resources and programming are available to prevent incarceration. He's experienced and savvy entrepreneur, and he's a pretty sharp guy too, who believes in training and developing the next generation of young professionals. He believes with a second chance and the right opportunities present, our young people can thrive and become successful. Welcome, Mr. Richard. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. It's a pleasure seeing you again. And
Is it?
As always.
Oh, good folks, family. So good to have you here today. and we're going to have a conversation, and not only about the great, I don't want to say work, the great passion that you do and your organization does, but I also want to find out a little bit about yourselves first. So in my tradition, I like to do ladies first. Rachel, great bio, but what was young Rachel all about? That's a good question, eh?
I think we don't have enough time for that.
Well, you know what? You can condense it. I know you can do a good job.
So yeah, I was street involved at the age of 16. And during that time of self-searching and self-identity, I basically went from place to place. And during that time, the individuals and those that took care of me were individuals from the hood, which is part of why I wear the shirt.
I love. Can I get one of Can I get one of those?
So this is actually made by RH Dan, so you can actually see her just below. But I can definitely send you her contact information.
Please do. If she does 3X or 4X, I'm in business.
For sure. Yeah, no, she's doing a huge movement right now to really bring attention to a lot of the marginalized communities and low-income communities. But part of the reason why I wear it is for myself. I found that it was those that were in the hood that were the ones that took care of me and supported me. And obviously during that journey, it may not necessarily have been in the most quote unquote legal of ways. And that was me sort of understanding and seeing how things went from there. But it also was eye-opening for me. And after seeing so many individuals and people that I was close to who either passed away or were consistently in and out of the prison system, that's where I saw my calling in terms of really being able to support, bridge those gaps, curb those barriers to ensure that it wasn't something that was going to continue to be a generational curse.
So you did a good job.
I would say so. We're still working.
Work in progress. Richard, a little bit about your background for our audience.
So I had my experience with the law myself. I picked up a charge of assault causing bodily harm. And going through the system itself on my charge, I had my ins and outs, and I just came across a lot of corruption, things that I just didn't believe that was right, injustice when it came to individuals in that atmosphere going through those changes. And at the time, I kept on, I had that mentality where, you know, when you're a child, your parents told you that something, if that wasn't right, come and talk to me about it. If something wasn't right, you know, just don't go along with it, don't do it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just, I started advocating for the things that, because I had a set of people that was telling me that I couldn't do this or I couldn't say this, and you're supposed to be a government official or superior than me. But what you're telling me, I did not feel that you're right. There was something wrong. And I got to the point where I just kept on fighting against, you know, these things. And I ended up having one of my own personal legal team. And I was speaking to him one day, and he says to me that you have to have the concept. Because someone tell you that something is right, and someone told them that something is right, doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. So continue advocacy, but you have to advocate or stand up for yourself in another way, because if you continue to do the way you're doing it, you're just going to be able to create more problems for yourself.
Right.
So I kind of just sat down, and I was lucky enough to have his assistant, a gentleman, he's a defense lawyer by the name of Sean McDonald. And he, for years, I would say about 3-4 years, he spoke to me every day, and he guided me the way how to navigate through things. And I started following his method, or what he was mentoring me with, and I started making progress. I was able to make claims against the government. I was able to succeed, and my voice was being heard at my claims. So with that said, I wanted to be able to assist other people in the community and steer our young people away from getting themselves caught up in the system to where they don't know they're buried. Because what I found was a lot of young people, a lot of even adults, didn't know their way to navigate through the system.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of factors or barriers when it came to that area. So I wanted to create a platform or create an organization where I'm able to give that assistance, but also be a voice about the individuals that don't have the opportunity that I had, or have the opportunity to have someone to mentor them. Like I had a defense lawyer who believed in me and be able to guide me to where I am today.
Well, someone's giving both of you love. Karen Samuels is saying both Rachel and Richard have lived experiences which make them amazing leaders, influencers, and mentors. So you are loved, both of you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Rachel, how did you find out about this wonderful organization?
So Keep Six, I don't remember if I was following Keep Six before if Keep Six was following me.
Oh,
Richard does have a follow finger. Um,
okay.
But we were following each other for some time. And I've always been someone who's very passionate when it comes to community and activism, especially when it comes to those that are criminalized. And at one point, there was a ask for assistance when it came to looking for individuals to additional volunteers. So I reached out and I said I do have a legal background. If there's a way in which that I can assist or help, I'm not currently practicing now, but that is what I went to school for. If I can assist in any way, like I'm more than willing to help. And I'm pretty sure Richard called me, like by the end of the day, Richard had called me. And what was supposed to be just like a 15-minute conversation was over an hour. If anyone's been on the phone with Richard, you know how in depth those conversations can get. And it, and it started with just like in terms of volunteering, we would love to have you on board. And it went sort of from volunteering to really being a full-fledged a part of the team and completely involved in the initiatives and the creating and everything from there. And I kind of guess at first I thought I was just dipping my toe in, and eventually I just got immersed, for lack of a better word.
Well, that's good. Richard, share some of the early days of the organization. Like, what did you start it all by yourself and just then attract wonderful people like Rachel?
Yeah, believe it or not, I did. I remember quite clearly. I had, like I explained, I had this passion to educate my community, but also to help them. So after my own experience, I was started Keep Six, but at the time I was released from a federal institution, but I was still in the care of Correctional Service Canada.
Wow.
Because I was in a halfway house.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm doing this organization, and I just wanted to do it. And I had, pushbacks like everybody else from Correctional Service. Well, this must be an organization that's going to gather criminals and everything else. And I had within Correctional Service, they have a team. They're like they're in-house Correctional Service police. They're called HIPSO. So one day I went to see my PO, parole officer, for my monthly meeting or bi-weekly, and she says to me, "We want to see HIPSO is there in the office too." And they're, well, what is Keep Six about and everything else. I'm like, well, this is what it is. So I spoke to my legal team, and they said, well, just keep on doing what you're doing. They can't do anything to you. You have a voice. You're a lot. It's human rights. So I built Keep Six, and a lot of people don't even know this, or no one knows this, while I was actually in the care of Correctional Service Canada.
My goodness. Rachel, did you know that?
I did.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was in a halfway house. So I was working, and I didn't have to pay rent or nothing like that because I'm under their care at the
Sure.
time. So I had a theory. I knew how much I made in my trade and work. So I didn't want to go in the area where I was going to go look for funding or get funding, and then the government is going to be telling me, well, I can't do this or I can't say that because I'm just not that type of person. So I decided to finance my whole organization myself.
Wow.
Right. So I was working, I didn't have to pay, and I made significant, income. So I invest that money into the community. So I had individuals who needed counseling, so I paid for their counseling. They wanted to work, so I started helping them to get jobs and give them the clothing or the work gear that they needed to work. Right. So that was my struggle. It wasn't really a struggle for me because I was more focused. I knew what I wanted to do and I knew what needed to be done.
Right.
So to put it bluntly, I made that sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help people in the community and do that. So that was my hardest part. And then at the same time, I think for me it was a time where I reached out. I remember quite clearly. There was an event I went through that it was, I thought it was called the Black Business or Black Business or something of the sort. It was an area where they had all Black businesses and they had their like a flea market setting, but there
Sure.
was all Black businesses once
Sure.
a year. I think it was May of that year. So I attended the event and I started walking around and I was going to do my first um, panel discussion. So I had met a lady at Young Street Mission. She's the director for the family department, their division there, called Marcia Sheldon. And I told her my story and what I wanted to do. And she said to me, whatever I can do, you know, call me, I'll do it. So I wanted space. And she gave me the space. So I was able to get the space and I was getting a panel, my defense lawyer, someone from the ministry. It was a manager at the Toronto East Detention Center back then. Another lady who does great work in the prison, Zia Brown, and a few other people. My attorney and David Mitchell. He
Yeah.
was at the time the president for ABLE. So he came out and they had a panel discussion, and that discussion ended up getting videotaped by a lady named Nikki Clark, who had a show named the Nikki Clark Show. And then other organizations end up seeing it and end up reaching out to me and wanted that panel discussion, and then we grow. So with that said, from that experience, my hardest time was when I went to that event and I reached out to other businesses for support. And I remember quite clearly, I had 19 businesses
Right.
that says, oh yeah, we wanted support. But at the end of the day, there was only one organization, one business that actually came up to the plate.
Oh.
And it was a gentleman stolen from Africa,
Yes.
an organization.
What's his name?
And Neil?
Neil.
Right.
Logic. Yes.
Right, Logic, right.
Yes.
So he came and he gave some T-shirts, some baseball hats, and stuff for the youth in the community. But everything else for that event, when I did it, was outside of our community, right? And it just really, really, really took me that I was really trying to do this work, and I didn't have no support from my own people, and I was just going through a real struggle. Because I was investing. You have to think about it like my mindset at the time. I was invested in my community. So I was working 12 hours a day, and every cent that I made, besides what I spent, I think at the time I was spending maybe $100 a week on what they call a Presto card.
Yeah. Well, it was Metro Pass, now Presto card.
Right. So, otherwise I invest all my money in the community, and he was the only one, and that was about the hardest thing I can really think, I went on, but I made it.
You're here, and you've got wonderful people with you, like Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel, I want to chat with, and there's so many different ways I can go. So let me go this way. What has the situation been for the young people you're helping during the pandemic?
So with the pandemic and the lack of being able to really be social, having those social interactions, we've seen, and I think this is across the board, regardless of if they're young, old, and alike, is there's been a lot. It takes a toll on everyone from a mental health standpoint. And even speaking with colleagues of ours who are psychotherapists and counselors, with many of them, they've seen an increase in their caseload just for individuals that are looking for assistance and support. And I think that's been across the board. A lot of individuals I've spoken to within the therapy industry have waiting lists now due to the amount of individuals that have been looking for support. In the same time, with everything that's been going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, what we've been seeing going on in the States, what we've been seeing going on in Canada as well, there's also a huge call from corporations when it comes to anti-Black racism training, looking at things from a trauma-informed lens. So right now, it's really one, working with our community to ensure that each and everyone is feeling supported, to understand that their feelings are valid, no matter what those feelings may be, because this pandemic has taken a toll on everyone. And then also just trying to put them in line with the right needs of support, so that they're able to at least speak to someone and not feel like they're alone, because right now, like I mentioned, it's been taking a toll on everyone mentally.
Richard, I'm just going to piggyback and continue the conversation where Rachel has taken us. How challenging or how serious is the area of trauma with these young people?
It's a very, very serious and hard topic for a lot of individuals in our community. What we have to stop and look at, these young people, once they are going through the system or they experience these situations in their life, they're carrying that burden. But you have to remember that when it comes to trauma or depression or mental health overall, it isn't something that is talked about in our community. So these individuals do not have the capabilities or the avenues of how to express themselves. So they suppress it and say they're okay and carrying on with a day-to-day life. So that is one of the main issue, I would say, that is causing the issue of having so much of our young people that's within the system, because they're getting out, but the issue that has to be addressed inside, which is from trauma, because even going inside, it's a trauma. I personally, myself, I must have spent about, I said, 2 years just actually seeing somebody and talking to somebody about my experiencing going through the system and what I've gone through, right? So we have to we have to look at all these issues that we are facing and deal with the mental health aspect of it. And in these times right now, it's a very, very difficult time for our community, but also for our young people. The lockdown, the whole COVID situation, but also the load of trauma and mental health that they're carrying and not having the resources, but not even knowing how to address these issues.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a really challenging time, and I think that, and I want to bring Rachel back in this, and I really want Rachel, with the young women that you're helping, what are they going through? Because I'm thinking they're in a incarceration system that a lot of times didn't give them a lot of support. Even if it wasn't COVID, the system outside is lacking in support. But now you compound it with a pandemic. How I want to hear from your heart, from your eyes. How are our young women of color? What are they going through? Because we don't hear about it. We're not going to hear about it on major news, and if it does, it's like a 3-minute clip. I'd like to speak more than a 3-minute clip, so to speak, of what the Black women are going through during this time, who are either incarcerated or just out of incarceration.
It's true. It's true. I think for women in general, for those I've spoken to, and a lot of colleagues that I work with who work primarily within women prison systems, the theme continues to be the same, and it's abandonment. And the reason why I say that is, as you mentioned, the system in itself, there's already very little to any resources. And now when we couple that with the pandemic, where now programming in the system in the prison system has been almost entirely removed, because obviously those on the outside that are doing the work are no longer able to go inside. But even things like no more visitation, because again, those on the inside can't go in. No more visitation, countless lockdowns for long periods of time. For some, it's even less phone time because they're locked in for so long to avoid them all mingling on range. So they've got less social contacts. They've got less family contacts. They've got less community contacts. And so the feeling of abandonment is very, very valid. And then for those that are Black, Indigenous, the resources, there's very little to any resources that are specifically catered to our Black and Indigenous brothers and sisters. So everything coupled, I mean, there's so many that have had breakdowns. There's so many who have felt left out. They don't have individuals to turn to. In regards, if we're looking at those in the prison system, or even if we look at those that are out currently, we've seen a much more increased rates of domestic abuse, sexual abuse, and there's really nowhere to turn. They're very limited at this point, which is the sad and frustrating thing about it. And that's sort of where we're really trying to work with various organizations to do as much as we can to really support these individuals during this time.
I'm happy that you shared that perspective, because one of my biggest concerns over the last year is what we're not hearing. And I'm happy. I'm happy that you brought out that perspective of domestic violence and things, because we're not hearing about it.
Yeah.
We're not hearing about it at all. Richard, I want to come to you. What are our young Black men who are in this environment going through? What are you hearing from them? What are they experiencing?
Well, at the present time, for a lot of them, is just the lack of not being able to speak to their families, support programs. We have young people who are trying to get out, but they're inside. They're not able to get that support they need, to address their mental health, programs that they might need to move forward in life after their release. They're not able to receive these kind of support. That's one of the hardest things for them. And it's just coping through this whole situation. And you have to remember something. It's hard enough for us out here to be coping. Just imagine being in a room 6 by 11, for 19 hours a day, or you might get out for a couple hours, or might not be able to shower for a week, or not get fresh air for a month, not be able to talk to their family member for 10 days, or what period of time, or a week. So you have to remember that their mind is playing on them through these whole situations, right? It's very, very difficult. So that's what, at the present time I hear from these young people or individuals.
And
Rachel,
one thing I want to
go ahead.
add, sorry, just as a quick point, Richard was mentioning about programs. So as mentioned before, because individuals within the community that provide certain programs aren't able to go in, and due to the fact that obviously they're trying to minimize the amount of contact, a lot of programming has stopped entirely within the prison system. And for a lot of individuals that are eligible for parole, especially in the federal system, if they don't complete their programming, then they don't get parole.
Oh boy.
So, but they can't get parole. They can't do their programming because there's restrictions when it comes to COVID-19. And there hasn't been a solution provided for that. And so we've been in this pandemic now for about a year.
Yep.
And I think we've seen companies and organizations that have really been able to adapt. And the new word I feel for 2021 is pivot. But we're not seeing that within the system. And so a lot of these guys are now held back, but it's by no fault of their own.
Well, I'm past pivot. I want results.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Right. Pivot. Yeah, pivot. My people have been pivoting for about 400 years. I'll leave it at that. Right. So I'll just put that comment in there. One thing, Rachel, you said that I'm puzzled about: less time on phone communicating with family on the outside. Why is there less time when the families aren't going anywhere? Why are they restricting the time? Is it because of the number of people that want to communicate? Didn't they have schedules already where they would communicate weekly, etc.? I don't understand that part. Please try to give me some clarity.
So what they've done, especially in CSC being federal, is because there's no more visitations, they have opened up video visits.
Okay.
Now, each institution is different in what that might look like. So where one institution, you could book a video visit for an hour, 2 hours. Some are only 30 minutes. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, could be once a month. It depends on the institution. And that's one of the consistencies of inconsistency, for lack of a better word, where each institution is able to, there's so much of a gray area that each institution is able to kind of create their own ruling when it comes to what that looks like.
Can I just interrupt you there? Do they have the power to do that? Shouldn't there be uniform practices?
You would think that. You would think that. But I can speak to, I know there's in certain institutions in Quebec where you were only able to have a 30-minute video visit once a month. Whereas
once a month.
Once a month. Whereas there were institutions in Kingston where you could have a 1-hour visit bi-weekly. Other institutions, you could have a 2-hour visit per month. Some institutions, it was 1 hour every week. So there's no streamline in terms of, or a unified line in terms of what that looks like. And that's one of the things that we see specifically with CSC is it's all, regardless of if it's visitation, video visits, POVs, there's so much of a gray area that they can kind of make their own, it's according to their discretion. Now, when we look at the phone calls in general, due to now increased lockdowns to minimize the amount of contact on range, it's now provided less phone time. If we're going to go even further, because I speak predominantly from a federal perspective, but if we go even further and we look at it from a provincial perspective, like Richard mentioned, a lot of these guys are locked down for days. And so they get a shower maybe once every 3 days, once every week. And if you're locked into yourself for days, then your family, you're not, when you do get released or let out of yourself, you usually are only released for a couple hours. And at that time, your options are, well, do I go to the phone or do I take a shower? Or do I go to canteen? So how do you divide your time? And of course, everybody has been locked in for so long. Everybody's trying to get to the phone, but you only have maybe 2 hours, 3 hours at most. So you can run and try to get in the line for the shower. You can run and try to get to commissary to get something. Then you can try and fight to get to the phone. Odds are you're probably not going to hit all three.
Yeah.
Richard, talk to me. I'm shaking my head.
We have to come to terms and realize something. The system is this is not an accident. It's made this way. So when you have decision makers, and this is one thing, there's two things I continue to say all the time. One, they need to stop using a word, reintegration, because within the system itself, they do not support offenders when it comes to reintegration. Number two is that what goes on, there's so many human rights that's being violated by our young people, women and men within the system. But they do not take accountability for these things. So we have to come to terms and says, enough is enough. We have to start to hold these individuals accountable. If you stop and look, I'll give you an example. If you ever had the opportunity after all this, take the time one day and go into a courtroom, a sentencing courtroom, a plea court, as they would call it, and just listen to the how the caseloads of our young people are handled. You'll hear the Crown start breaking down these young people. You hear the judge at the end of the day, well, says, you know, you are no good to the human race. I am going to send you away for 12 months or 18 months.
Yep.
Well, you have to stop and look. And you were speaking about trauma earlier on. When I say to you that these our young people are in trauma, there's your perfect example. It starts from there. If you continue to hear a judge tells you that you're no good, you hear the Crown is pushing it, there's nothing good that they have to say. When you leave there, you're in the care of the paddy wagon, or you might hear in the institution. You hear the guards are telling you, you have no rights. If you wanted rights, you shouldn't be here. Well, these things are embedded in these individuals. Then you get to an area where you have to fight. It's a survival situation, you know? But at the end of the day, you hear that our system, our decision makers or stakeholders, they say, well, hey, we're doing everything to the best of our ability. There's another part of it that goes on in our system here again, where we as a community, you and I, we work. But the government runs a business also, right? You have every federal offenders, the maximum federal offenders making is about $36 every 2 weeks. But the federal government makes everything from parachute that the Army uses, furniture, beds, repair Army vehicles, buses, and everything else, lockers, cupboards, and everything else. But the offenders only get $32 every 2 weeks. A bottle of shampoo is $7 to purchase, to wash. You know, but the government uses these people and says, well, hey, we're not paying them, they have to give back to society. But how, when does this person gets released and comes back in society, what does he have? Then the only mandate is it says, well, reintegration, you have to get a job. That's one of the mandatory things. But they have no skills. Well, what is it you're doing? Well, you can get a job at $15 an hour. Well, the guys are saying, no, I'm not going to go work for $15 because I was doing this and that before I went in. I'll go back in and finish off my time.
Yeah.
Right? So how are you reintegrating? You have to have a different mentality to empower our people. And this is where the reason why I built Keep Six and try to do the work that we do within the organization.
Amazing. Good stuff. Anything you want to add right now? Anything else? So I can move on to other conversation topics. I think it seems that it was already a bad situation or a challenging situation and the last year just amplified it.
Yeah.
And it seems that the accountability continues to be like trying to hit a moving target.
Right. You see, one of the things is that even when you, as I put it bluntly, when you able to catch them with their pants down, and you
go, Richard. You're going.
You know,
Richard's going in.
And you go at them at a level where you know that there's no way that they can get out of this because they're going to trip and fall on their face. But they will stand up with their best legal team and try to justify something that they've done wrong. And it just boggles my mind. But if you go ahead and you're in the courts and you're trying to justify something that you've done wrong, that you're going to get prosecuted wrong, they says, well, hey, you don't take accountability for your actions. You know what I mean? So then, I'm going to sentence you another 2 years because you're not taking accountability. And I'm not going to give you parole because you're not kind of taking accountability. Well, hey, you are the stakeholder, but you're not taking accountability for the things you've done wrong. You have violated thousands of individual human rights daily. Right? But you are dealing with individuals that do not have the capability to address these issues or defend themselves. So you're taking advantage of our human race. Right? So when is this going to stop? Right?
One of the things too is that a lot of individuals don't know their rights.
And I want to stop right there because it's bringing me back to how challenging is this situation when there is a lack of Black Indigenous practitioners in the trauma field and in the legal field. How much does that situation make this situation an even graver situation for our young people?
So, and I think Richard can speak to this when it comes to one, again, as mentioned, a lot of people not knowing their rights. And it really, the onus, as sad as this may sound, the onus came on certain individuals within the system that were incarcerated to ask for the policies and rules and regulations, because for a lot of them, it's not accessible for them in the prison library. So they're unable to know their rights if it's not accessible to them. And I know accounts of specific individuals that are in the system who read through the CSC regulations and can list sections off by memory now. That being said, when we look at the support systems that are put in place, so for those that are incarcerated, a lot of them may not necessarily be able to afford legal representation, and so they're getting the representation through legal aid.
But let me ask, so it has legal aid must be restricted during this time now too.
I've seen there is a budget.
Okay.
And the budget, from what I understand with relation to the budget, I'm not too sure how much it has been affected currently, considering the fact that there is now a lot of virtual court, so a lot of the costs associated with travel have gone down a little bit, but they do still have access to legal aid. That being said, however, when it comes to representation of Black and Indigenous lawyers and support, that's very, very minimal. And one, for someone that's inside, there's already a lack of trust right off the bat, just based on what they've had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And now they're required to put their trust in an individual that they've never met before, that for a lot of them, it has been appointed to them unless they have friends or family that are able to kind of do the research on the back end to be like, okay, I think this might be a right fit. And so their trust is now put in somebody that they're not able to relate to. That doesn't look like them, may not be able to understand where they're coming from, what their background is like. there is a lot of factors that a lot of individuals don't take into consideration, and how that might affect them when it comes to, one, really just having hope and being able to have what we would consider a quote unquote normal life. Same thing when it comes to correctional officers. If you're in a institution or on a range where there's hardly any Black or Indigenous correctional officers, and you're consistently being oppressed and bullied and told what to do by individuals that don't look like you and don't have any compassion to understand your background, you can't relate to them. And it's very hard to really, quote unquote, rehabilitate someone if you're not able to build that rapport and create a way for them, create that relationship where they want to change. And the Black and Indigenous COs that we are seeing in the institutions are the ones that are now coming out and saying that they themselves are facing racial discrimination at work. So how much more so are the inmates who can't come out and speak out about it?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's very, very real. I mean, unfortunately, I think what happened in today's time is that our community or society is brainwashed by what they see on the media and so forth. But the real aspect of what goes on behind the walls or behind the fence is a totally different persona and a totally different picture. And until we're able to bring this to light, things will continue to go it is. I was fortunate enough to have a wonderful legal team who stood by me and believed in me and, fought. We went in the ring, put on the gloves and, do what we had to do. And I continue to have that support and I'm very grateful. But the problem is how many other people are out there that has the position that I had or the opportunity that I had, right? To be able to have someone who believe in them and stand up for them and continue to fight. That's what we have to look at. And that's how I try to make that change by building and advocating for other people who don't have that voice or have that support. Be able to give them that support so that they're able to sustain and be a positive member in society. I was lucky enough I ended up with a parole officer. I was very blessed. In a way, I feel that my whole journey, God wanted me to go through that experience because of just the way things worked out in my life personally. I just feel very strongly like it wasn't as if there's a time in your life where you have to go and look for people or look for things to happen. It all just fall into place. And the work that and just gave me more motivation to continue the work and so forth, right? Rachel was speaking about someone that looked like me. I was fortunate to have a parole officer that looked like me and could relate to and looked at my file and said, well, this is something isn't right here, you know what I mean? And believed in, what I was trying to say all along and speak about and, be able to get the support even to be where I am today too.
This is a battle. This is a serious battle. Like, what are the parents going through? Those who have relationships with their parents. What are the parents going through at this time? Because again, it's not an easy situation, but again, amplified because of the pandemic. How are the parents holding up?
It's traumatic for them at this time. It's very, very hard. It's very difficult because you just imagine that mother knowing that her son or her daughter is away. And one thing you have to realize when a person is incarcerated, a simple thing that we take for granted, like a phone call, that's the world, right? Because you have to remember that person, you're not able to see them, but just to hear their voice, to say, the only thing they want to know, I am okay, and just to hear that person's voice, it means a lot. So it's very difficult for the families, the mothers right now. Very, very difficult, not hearing about their children, because no matter what, everyone makes mistakes, and some individual get caught, some people don't. By the end of the day, it's still your child, right? We all go through it, and we always want to support them no matter through what time, and hopefully it's a lesson learned. And that's what we have to do. And so it's very difficult for the mothers and fathers and families out there.
Yeah. And not just the parents too, but even like the partners, the wives, the girlfriends. And I know we often speak from a feminine standpoint, and not to say that there aren't amazing men that support their brothers and fathers and what have you. But we do find more often than not, especially in a lot of the group chats that have been created as a level of support, a lot of it are the women that are the ones that maybe are reaching out for that support. And it's like Richard mentioned in terms of wanting to just hear, I'm okay. And instead, when you hear, yeah, we're on range, but we haven't received any PPE yet, or we don't have any cleaning supplies, or the COs that were serving food to the guys on the next range that are quarantined because they do have COVID just came over to our range and didn't change out of their PPE gear and are now serving us. People are like, what? That doesn't make sense. What do you mean they just came from the COVID range and came to your range and didn't change or disinfect? That doesn't make any sense.
That's great.
Or when you hear of individuals who've tested positive for COVID but haven't been quarantined and have been put back on the same range as everybody else who hasn't tested positive, your mind, you're like, okay. And so the anxieties, if anyone who's had somebody incarcerated knows that as soon as one person gets sick, everybody gets sick. Because of overpopulation, because of close quarters, because of little to any ventilation, because of a lack of cleanliness. Regardless if it was the flu, especially in the wintertime, everybody would get sick. Whole range would get sick. So can you imagine even now with COVID? There's been COVID outbreaks in multiple institutions to the point where they'd had to close full institutions down and ship those inmates to other institutions that were already overpopulated.
So doesn't that just make the situation worse?
Yeah.
And don't they care?
It's a business.
I'll let you ask that question.
Well, I'd love to ask someone that question. If you give me the name of the person, I'll ask them that question, and I'll challenge them more. I'll ask them to come on this platform.
Well, we'll give you the opportunity. We're trying to put together a panel discussion with Correctional Service Canada and the Attorney General, but no one has replied back to us as yet. So unfortunately, we're going to have to reach out to the Attorney General and hear when we're going to be able to get someone to come and speak to our community about these issues.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very, very sad, man. It's unbelievable. Last year, just to even give you the mentality of them, we had a young man that was in a halfway house in the city of Brampton. And in that particular facility, he had no PPE. There was no soap to wash the floor or clean the place for disinfectant. Just pure water they're using. When he reached out to us, and we contacted the city health department and the mayor's office and so forth, and they stepped in. By the time they violated him and sent him back into jail. And they used the fact that he took a video of the empty container, the soap, not even soap to wash your hands. So this is what really goes on. This is real.
Let me ask, do you have a list of all these, and I'm going to be kind, questionable actions? Because I would love to see the day that both of you present almost like I'd like in the old days, you used to have a long things of paper, just keep on reading, keep on reading all these actions, and just I would love to see what answer or what response, what body reaction, even more so, to all these, as I'm going to say, questionable actions. I'll just leave it in that terminology.
Better than that, the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, which is another organization that works closely for advocating for prisoners, they actually had received recordings of inmates calling in, and they recorded those conversations that specified specific ranges in individuals and things that were happening in terms of lack of PPE, transports, the mixing of individuals that were both positive and negative. So it's more than just lists. There's recordings of this information. There's individuals who have been able to send out what you would say is quote unquote evidence in terms of what it is that they've been experiencing. So there's more than just a list.
Okay.
We'll say that.
Do any of you know that any young people have contracted the virus and or died in incarceration during this last year?
I don't have any list of anyone that has been in contact with us that has died, but I do know of an individual that just passed away at the Toronto East Detention Center.
How old do you know?
I think he was late 50s or early 60s.
Well, as we wind down this conversation, and I hope that this is our part one of many, what does the community need to do? And are we doing it? Because I get a feel, because I know I have some conversations with Richard, and I don't know where he's going to go with this. But I have a feeling, but I'm not going to make an assumption. Dangerous word. What? Okay, let me start it this way. On a scale of 1 to 10, 0 to 10, 0 being terrible and 10 being fantastic, how would you rate the community response to this situation?
Our community.
I would say it's hard to put a number. It's hard to say, to give an answer. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because there are a lot of individuals, especially more recently now, as we've seen, not just within the prison system, but just in general, what's been going on in the States and with Peel Police specifically, with the number of individuals who've been killed by Peel Police lately. A lot of individuals have now been more outspoken and have come out a lot more to speak on what's going on. And because of that, there's been a lot more protests. There's been a lot more conversation. So now, in comparison to even a year ago, I would say there's been more involvement now. Now, that's really speaking to that percentage of individuals, however, who are coming out and doing that work and are coming out and standing outside of Toronto South and protesting and standing out of Maplehurst and standing out of the police, various police stations to do that, is still a small percentage when we look at the community as a whole. But that being said, there are still more individuals that are supporting the movement now that they've seen what's really going on.
Okay. Inspiring to hear. Richard?
I would say I don't have an actual, I can't really grade it, but I do know that when it comes to the community in general, especially, I don't know, what you call the younger generation, they're really standing up and coming together. I do feel that it could be much more stronger. I do feel that there could be more voice or more work so that they're actually being heard. It's got to get to a stage where the stakeholders realize that, you know what, we can't hide in the office anymore. We cannot try to camouflage that we're doing this great work. Okay, we're not. And we can't keep on giving this money that we have to these big organizations that has no idea of what's going on in the community. But we are telling them, we're giving them this money, and they're saying that they're doing this work, but it's not being done. That money is not reaching these individuals in the community. That's one of the biggest thing right now, because I'll just say one thing quickly. We have a significant amount of small grassroots organization that's doing the work, as I would put it, in the gutter. They are in the trenches. But remember something, these organizations, they're the work, but they're not getting any funding. And the other problem is this monopoly game that's going on when it comes to funding. When the funds are being distributed, by the time the funds get to who needs it, that fund is already gone out to these large organizations, right? So whatever is left over is what I would call the crumbs.
Yeah.
And these individuals, they're being brainwashed to say, well, there's this money coming down. It's not money. If you hear $60 million, it's nothing. There's already $200 million that was given out already to these big organizations, right? So
does it then beg to ask, do you feel that these organizations need to work more together, need to collaborate more?
Yes, collaborate, but it also needs to be a body that needs to oversee where these funds are going and what are these funds are doing. That is one of the biggest things, because if you're given a organization X amount, $2 million, well, we need to see where they're doing this $2 million. I mean, not just give me some paperwork, but actually I want to go out and look at it. Someone needs to get up out of that office and go and look and see if this has been done.
So I'm going to let you away with it today, but we're going to have to, when I do a panel on government funding of organizations. Rachel, pardon me?
Said you know who to call.
Oh, I know. Don't worry. You'll be in the audience. I won't have you on. I know who I'm going to ask for that one. And if he hides away from me, I'm going to get in contact with you to find him for me.
Man.
You know it? Definitely. That's a whole other conversation that is necessary to be had. So we will be having it on this platform. I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know you have a life and you have things to do. What would you like to say to our audience is in parting thoughts? So I'd like to have Rachel, what would you like to share with parting thoughts and comments or any call to action?
So call to action, or thoughts in general would be, a lot of those that are incarcerated, they're humans as well. Some, it's simply just them being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they need our support. Black individuals in general, I mean, we've been provided the shorter end of the stick from youth when it comes to education, when it comes to community, when it comes to the financial sector. And so we have to come together to build our village, to build our community. And that involves supporting each other through that journey. And so the best way we can do that right now is, one, obviously making the noise, which is what we're doing now, to bring attention to what is going on, and to really bring that attention to the point where, as Richard said, you can no longer be sitting in your office. It needs to be addressed. But not just making the noise, but also providing those solutions in terms of what we want to see. I'm a strong believer that it takes a village to grow up a boy or a girl. It takes a village to support them through their childhood, through their adolescence, into their adulthood, and even into their old age. It still takes a village to take care of them. And so we've got to be alongside that journey throughout that process. And so as that community needs to really step up to be able to take that control in taking care of each other, providing the solutions in terms of what it is that we want to see, what is it that we need, and really taking those steps to curb those barriers that are put in front of us. Trust the process.
Okay. Richard.
Well, it's the for me it's the tough things that we go through that makes us what we are today. And we have to remember that every one of these individuals that has mishaps or going through the system or is in their community, we have to support them. We can't turn our back on them, and we have to remember to uplift each other every day. One of our worst enemy is our own people at the end of the day, because we continue to break each other down, and we have to learn to come together and stand as one, right? We have a wonderful program over at Keep Six now called Gangster Tuition. So if there's anybody that's in that criminal lifestyle that wants to exit, we have this program allows you to get those skills, and also gives you the opportunity to be a part of the union in the trade sector, also be in a digital media or technology. We have a beautiful this year, in the next little while, be coming out with we've got Keep Six Records that I've founded this last year, coming out with our first artist.
So what? I'm gonna start calling you Richard Quincy Jones Miller. So I'm gonna call you Richard Q. Okay, all right.
We have
Richard J.Z. Miller. Is that better?
Well, we have to support our community. We have to uplift them in every which way. So we have Keep Six Records coming out with a brand new track for the summer. Don't Touch the Gun. So stay tuned.
Wow. As we close the conversation, in the comments that both of you said, it makes me think that, are we ready to support each other? And no matter what your background is, are we willing to support each other? Whether we look the same or look different, are we willing to go into conversations with our elbows down instead of our elbows up?
All right.
So that resonates with me in regards to, throughout this conversation, what you just shared. The producer, can you put up the website of this incredible organization? Keep Six, and the way it's spelled. And for those who are listening on the replay, it's Keep, KEEP, and the number 6 ix.org.
Yes.
So if you're watching, you can see it. But if you're listening, I just spelled it out for you. Also, if you can put up their Facebook information, they're on Facebook, and they're also on Twitter and the Instagram at Keep, again, 6 the number IXORG. Rachel, Richard. Okay, the R&R connection. Then just thought about that. I guess it's all in the line with all this music company, all this sort of stuff. I'd like to thank everyone of your organization, past, present, and future, for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing. You do have a home here. We expect you to come back. And I'm here to support. Richard and I have conversations every few months to just check in with each other. Thinking food, I'm hungry. That just whatever way we can amplify, especially what he's doing. If I get it, great. I'm more concerned about what your organization is doing. So I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time. And to all the people in your organization and you serve, my big message is, remember to give yourselves grace.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You.
It's always a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you so much. It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. 2020 Podcast News 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, the host of the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care, also co-sponsored by Dad Central Canada's national fatherhood organization. And I'm also the board chair for the Global Food and Drink Initiative, which is a multimedia not-for-profit that showcases Blacks in the diaspora that are involved in food, wine, and travel. I'd like to thank some people who watch this conversation live: Birdie Lynn, Najai Martinez, Thank you so much, Karen Samuels. Thank you so much. And if I didn't mention your name live, Vicky Rose, also want to mention yourself. If I didn't mention your name live, it's because of my head, not my heart. If you want to get in contact with me, the best place is the Dr. Vibe Show, the THEDRVIBESHOW.com. As always, I like to end off my conversations with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And remember to give yourselves grace. Thank you to BIA Media for the great production. And we'll see you next week, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Black Canada Talking. We will have a gentleman who's going to be talking about sickle cell. Yes, it's still very prevalent in our community. God bless. Peace to all. Keep the faith and walk good.